We need to be there on the basis of our rights, on the basis that we can influence and shape the change that's needed.
Welcome to Talking Shop, the Communities Inc. podcast. Episode 17. Are we doing enough about racism?
Hello, I'm Michael Henry, Strategic Director of Communities Inc. And in this episode, I invite a long-time friend and ally in for a chat. Would you like to introduce yourself, Clive?
Sure, thanks, Michael. Yes, so Pastor Clive Foster. I'm a senior minister at the Pilgrim Church based in the Meadows, Nottingham. Been doing that work for many years now. And I'm currently also working at Nottingham Trent University as the Executive Dean for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, abbreviated as EDI. And I've been involved a long time championing race equality in Nottingham.
Yeah, you have, haven't you, Clive? Because I remember back to, it was 2017 when on Valentine's Day of that year, we worked together. I believe you were working with City Council then. And but we put on an event called Love Not Hate, a slogan that we're still using on badges and other bits and pieces. Why? Yeah, just from your perspective, then, why did you work with us on that event?
Yeah, that's a really good call, actually, because I remember that, because obviously we were just going through Brexit and all that kind of stuff. Big talk about hate crime. And I was working, actually, at the Nottingham City Council as a project officer on hate crime. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to bring together all the key stakeholders, as it were, I guess, post the Brexit decision. And I was really pleased to be involved to work with yourselves. And we managed to do that. We filled the ballroom there. And we got so many different stakeholders.
Yeah, we had, was it about 130 people?
Yeah.
The largest hate crime event ever held in the city.
Yeah, in that room. And it was a great opportunity to talk about the things that we have in common and how we can work together, addressing what was a very polarizing time. And it needed to be done, because for me, I think what's really important, Michael, is leadership. And leadership at a institutional level, at a community level, at a stakeholder level. And so as a person who was working on hate crime, it was important to be a part of that. And I think that was a good time to actually say, what can we do collectively?
Yeah.
And it was, as you said, a great time to sort of hear from our key stakeholders in the city, across the city, to address hate crime and to promote the positive value of our shared history and shared experience, but also kind of going against the narrative, like it's, doom and gloom, and this is the worst it's been and it's the worst it's going to get. And we can do better because we have so much in common.
You just reminded me, of course, Brexit. That was the 2016. So that, it was really important. And we had Pastor Christian Weaver was one of the speakers at the event. So the Pilgrim Church and yourself, obviously connected to the same church, have been tackling and involved in these issues for some time. That's good.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So the Pilgrim Church, it's a majority black-led church. Reverend Canon Christian Weaver is the founding member of that church. In fact, just last year, October, we celebrated 60 years of being in the Meadows as a church. And I joined the church as a teenager, and many, many years ago now. But what was really, I found fascinating at the time, it was the first time that I was in a community where there was actually diversity in terms of different Caribbean islands, people coming together from Jamaica, St. Kitts, Antigua, and Reverend Canon Christian Weaver is from Antigua, and obviously people from the UK. And what I observed firsthand was his leadership skills. And then he obviously went on to do tremendous work in the community around promoting equality, working for the county council, setting up the local authority kind of equalities department.
Yeah.
And also he continues to be, was very inspirational about addressing head-on discrimination. And he continues to be very instrumental in providing that strategic leadership. And as you recalled, he spoke at that event as well. Yeah. But I think his first-hand knowledge of speaking out against race inequality and helping the community as a church to recognize, look, we have a responsibility as a church to be involved in those very social areas of inequality. And I think his inspiration and legacy is testament to the years of the work that we've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned the work that you've done, massive amounts of work. You've been leading on the Windrush stuff. We don't even have time to go into that. We'd have to, I think we'll bring you back in and have a separate podcast about that, because you've done some amazing work yourself and the church around that. And of course, you know, you've got your MBE, which is a whole different thing as well, which, you know, congratulations on that. But really, one of the things that we wanted to invite you in today to talk about is, unfortunately, we've got, you know, been seeing some disruption on the streets, not just Nottingham, but other parts of the UK, with the far right coming out. And basically, whilst the far right are saying, you know, that they're particularly against refugees, asylum seekers, and with the English Defence League being involved against Muslims, we know that the people of far right and those sort of thugs who come out, anybody who has got any sort of brown or brown skin, any you know, sort of accent and whatever, then they're likely to become a target. So what's your thoughts on what's been going on over the last couple of weeks or so?
Yeah, well, I think sadly, this is something that has been brewing for a long time, unfortunately. And the opportunity was taken by these, you know, and let's be clear about this. There are thugs and racists who have taken the terrible opportunity of a very sad and terrible murder of 3 young kids, and they've jumped it and used the opportunity to actually, as it were, spread the kind of racism and target people of colour. And also, we know specifically targeting Muslims. And it's very interesting how that came about through the kind of a disinformation on social media, which has resulted in a open expression of racism and violence. I wish I could say it is completely shocking. It is shocking in terms of what has happened, but this is all to do, I believe, with how are we as a nation addressing and tackling the issue of discrimination? Yeah. And how is the country changing? And are we facing up to this? And we both know, we're both, you know, ardents of, you know, everyone has a right to protest and to say, you know, we know that living in a democracy. But when it turns into hate, violence, that is just totally unacceptable. So we have seen with the rise of these kind of far-right protests and the riots in particular, how the country has had to respond. We've seen how, I think it's been very interesting, and I know we've had a bit of an experience recently being at a march in terms of what that has meant to the black community in particular. Because let's be clear about this, you know, it's almost like trying to incite a race war. Yeah. And that breeds fear, it breeds division, and, you know, it takes courage to stand up, because you can either, it's very easy to go one way or the other way. And I know we were both present at a recent protest, and it's sad to say, Michael, that from my experience, what I experienced was the amount of information that I was receiving when the protest became known that the EDL were coming to Nottingham. Yeah. I received a lot of comments saying, Clive, don't go into the town centre on that Saturday. Avoid going into the town.
Well, who was sending you those messages?
So these were people in the community. Some people who I know from well-meaning faith people. Yeah. And also people within our own community were getting messages. I contacted people in our own local church, and they were telling me, Clive, my my brother is saying, to me, saying to his sister, "Don't go into town today. What's all this about?" and so forth. But it was breeding a fear, and that is what was actually happening. So what was pleasing to see in Nottingham is that at the protest rally was the tremendous amount of people that came up under the banner of the Unity rally to say, "We're not standing for this."
Yeah, yeah.
And that was really pleasing to see. I have to say, there wasn't many black people there. You can count them on two hands in terms of the turnout. And I think this is something that we have to face up to within our community in terms of what's going on around resistance and activism in this sphere. I mean, when the rubber hits the road, where are we?
Absolutely. I've been saying the same thing in the last week. I've lost count of how many meetings I've been called to. And I've raised this on sort of various black platforms and WhatsApp groups and said, we need more of our people from our community to stand shoulder to shoulder with the other people who want to stand up against this. But I don't know what sort of responses you've had.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because I think we have to get better at mobilizing and speaking out of the importance of this and the consequences of not doing something.
Yeah.
Because doing something, you get an outcome, but there's also an outcome for not doing something. And so one of the things that I've been doing is talking to fellow black leaders from the church community and saying, and even personally being agitated by other members of the community saying, what's going on? What are we doing? What are you saying?
Yeah.
So we have. I'm part of the Nottingham Majority Black-led Churches. I got the call to attend the rally, the Unity rally, very interestingly, on the basis of to say a few words, but also to lead like a minute's silence. And as I mentioned earlier, what was really impressionable upon me was the lack of other black people around at the time. So one of the things that we have been doing is, and I've been talking to my own church community and saying, look, this is what's been happening. We know what's been in the news. It's important that we stand together, and we stand together with those who are being oppressed,
Yeah.
And so the Majority Black-led Church has read a statement. We've gone out to certain meetings that have been held in the community.
Yes.
And trying to get the message that we're not going to stand for this. We see the importance of what is happening here, but also bringing our authentic voice and our hurt and our concern into those conversations where decisions can be made.
Yeah, well, I mean, Clive, that doesn't surprise me one little bit from your personal view and from the church, because when I look at some of the people you've been bringing, well-known people from across, from across the states and that to
right.
Nottingham. Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, so we've been very privileged to bring over on two occasions Reverend Jesse Jackson, the civil rights icon who works alongside Dr. Martin Luther King and was even there present at his assassination. But his knowledge and expertise, you're talking about a black man who's run a couple of times for president, and now in that era with the... And he came, ironically, Reverend Jackson came in 2007, and then he came after Barack Obama was elected, and he came specially to sort of signify the importance of that, and to talk about the issues of inequality, which also we were looking at the economics of inequality, because even when you think about it in its most horrible form of slavery.
Yeah.
That was all about an economic situation.
Yeah, of course.
And so we were very privileged to have someone like Reverend Jesse Jackson come over to the local church on two occasions and bringing in, the community of Nottingham to hear from his words of wisdom and inspiration, and to look about how we can be challenging ourselves to, what can we do in the UK? What can we do in our community? What can we do in our local area to sort of bring about positive change in race equality?
Yeah. maybe you're going to have to bring him back, Clive. You know what I mean? To mobilise our community to stand up for their rights and stand up against these racists. But I went along to. I think it must have been 2007 that when he came over then, and he came to, I think Marcus Garvey Centre, hundreds of black people there, and people were just like buzzing for days after. It was inspirational.
Yes,
thank you for doing that. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
So, is there light at the end of the tunnel? You know, in terms of the black community of Nottingham and that. You know, we don't want to finish on a low point. You know, what are the positive? Are there any positive things going on in our community that you could highlight?
Yeah, so Reverend Canon Christian Weaver, with the great work that he's done at the Pilgrim Church, he's been a tremendous inspiration. His wisdom and insight has really given me a lot of confidence to do the work that I've been doing over the years. So one of the areas of work that we did at the church, and Reverend Weaver helped us to inspire this, was actually addressing knife crime. Right. So we set up a knife crime project in Nottingham. We had lots of trouble with knife crime over the years. And so we partnered with the Police Crime Commissioner to do a project in promoting positive messages. And Reverend Canon Christian Weaver said, look, just go for it, get involved and do that kind of work to address the social issues of the day. And his legacy is not only to the church, but obviously his son as well, David Weaver.
Oh, Dave, yeah, he's a star.
Amazing man who has done so much work, leading Operation Black Vote. Got to say, David Weaver was inspirational in actually bringing over Reverend Jesse Jackson, who came to the church on 2 occasions. And David has been an advisor to leading politicians and prime ministers, advocating for race equality. And we still, are obviously working with David Weaver on that as well. So as a son of Nottingham, he's been very inspirational in providing that kind of a leadership as well, backbone. So I think I say that to say the importance of having figures, that we can sort of return to, look to. Yeah. And it's a continuum. And I think in our own small way, we should be building inspiration, because I think what we've got to be doing now, certainly at my age and our age now, is looking to who is going to be developed and leading the work and inspiring the work in their own way, and doing it differently from Clive Foster, doing it differently from David Weaver and Reverend Canon Christian Weaver, but having that same will to see a more equal society.
Yeah. Clive, you're certainly mixing with some good people.
So I do really believe that we do have people across the city who really want to see change for the better, and that is black and white as well, and Muslims. We've got to remember that Nottingham was the one of the first race riots in 1958, and it has a history of actually addressing and dealing with these issues. And I think Nottingham's history around that recognises that it doesn't do it alone. It requires partnership and collaboration to do that as well. So I was very fortunate to be a part of the No Place for Hate campaign back in 2015, where we launched one of the largest pieces of research around hate crime. And that resulted in Nottingham becoming the first city in the world, as we know, to make misogyny a hate crime. And I think those sort of things in terms of history, looking at how we've engaged with the police, one of the biggest things that the problems that was facing the black community is its police relationships. And we've done a lot of work with the police through the organisation known as Nottingham Citizens, through the majority black-led churches, addressing that. I mean, one of the most recent initiatives that we've done with majority black-led churches is actually set up some of the majority black-led church leaders to be present in the custody suites, where there's a disproportion of young black people going into custody. And so we've worked with the police now so that there is actually more representation. Yeah. And so they can call upon black members of the faith community, Christian community, who can then just talk with and advocate for young people in custody. And we're finding that's really important. And that's male and female. So that's really positive. Small change, but an important change at that level. And I believe that there is a willingness within Nottingham for groups to come together. Sometimes, unfortunately, we can't wait for a disaster to happen before we get round the table, because there's a famous saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So, and we need to be there on the basis of our rights, on the basis that we can influence and shape the change that's needed. So I think as well, one of the things that I'm doing some work at the university in equality and diversity and inclusion. And I have to say, at Nottingham Trent, we've just come through graduations. And I've got to say, it's absolutely thrilling to be sitting in a graduation and seeing so many young black people
Oh, that's nice.
graduating.
Brilliant.
It just fills me with so much joy when I see, and from all different disciplines, whether that's law, science, the sports, and it's just fantastic. And so that fills me with hope.
Yeah.
And that spurs me on. And so I take that into my endeavours, and I've come to understand the importance of the long game. Look, the oppression and that sometimes black people have suffered, it's over centuries. Yeah. So I don't expect change to happen overnight, but I do expect change. And I am really thrilled when I see black people from different, whatever spheres, come together to work together for the betterment of our society. So I think that's important. And I see shoots of that happening. And I think that feeds me with hope for the future.
That's brilliant. Clive, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today. Keep up the good work. And we'll have you back in, because we've only just scratched the surface, I'm telling you. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.